The courtroom was silent. Officer Sarah Miller stood frozen as the judge's voice echoed, "Death penalty." Her hands trembled, not for herself, but for Rex, her loyal K9 German shepherd, watching from the side. His ears twitched at the gasps in the room. Sarah had been framed for a crime she didn't commit, and now she'd never see him again. As guards dragged her away, Rex let out a desperate whine, lunging against his handler's grip. Sarah turned one last time, whispering, "Find the truth, boy." The door slammed shut. Outside, rain poured as Rex paced in his kennel, claws scraping metal. He hadn't eaten in days. The other officers thought he'd adjust, but they didn't know Rex. That night, a loud clang echoed through the station. A janitor gasped. The kennel door was bent open. Rex was gone. The storm raged as Rex sprinted through the darkened streets, his paws splashing through muddy puddles. The scent of Sarah's uniform, faint but unmistakable, lingered in his nose, driving him forward. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to follow the trail before the rain washed it away completely. A passing car honked, its headlights briefly illuminating his soaked fur as he darted into an alley. His muscles burned, but he couldn't stop. Not when Sarah needed him. Hours later, exhausted and shivering, Rex finally reached an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, the last place Sarah had been before her arrest. The scent was stronger here, mixed with something else. Gunpowder? His ears perked up at the sound of muffled voices inside. Crouching low, he slipped through a broken window, his claws clicking softly against the concrete floor. Shadows moved in the dim light, two men arguing. "The cop took the fall, but we've still got loose ends," one growled. "That dog's a problem. If he sniffs out the real evidence..." Rex's fur bristled. These men were the reason Sarah was in prison. A low growl rumbled in his throat, but before he could react, a flashlight beam swept across the room. "What was that?" one thug snapped. Rex ducked behind a crate just as heavy footsteps approached. His heart pounded. If they found him, it was over. But then, a distant police siren wailed. The men cursed, scrambling to grab something from a metal case before bolting out the back door. The second they were gone, Rex lunged forward, sniffing frantically at the spot where they'd been standing. His nose brushed against a small, crumpled piece of paper, a receipt. The ink was smudged, but one word stood out: docks. Sarah had mentioned that place before. Was this the proof she needed? He clamped the paper gently between his teeth and turned to leave, only to freeze. A shadow loomed in the doorway. A man, and he wasn't alone. A sharp whistle pierced the air. There he is, the K9 unit. They'd tracked him down. Rex's mind raced. If they took him back, Sarah would never get the truth. With a sudden burst of speed, he bolted past the officers, their shouts fading behind him as he vanished into the night. The docks were his only lead now, but getting there wouldn't be easy. The city was crawling with cops searching for him. And worse, the real criminals knew he was onto them. The docks loomed ahead, shrouded in a thick fog that clung to the air like a ghostly veil. Rex moved silently, his body low to the ground, every muscle tense with anticipation. The receipt had led him here, but the place was crawling with danger. Shadowy figures unloading crates, the occasional flash of a cigarette ember in the dark, the low murmur of voices that carried an edge of violence. He could smell the salt of the sea mixing with something darker, oil, sweat, and the metallic tang of fear. This wasn't just a smuggling operation. It was something bigger, and Sarah was tangled in the middle of it. Rex slunk behind a stack of shipping containers, his ears twitching at the sound of a heated argument nearby. "The dog's a liability," a gruff voice snapped. "If he's here, that means he knows something. We can't risk him getting back to the cops." Another man laughed, cold and humorless. "Then we make sure he doesn't." The click of a gun safety being disengaged sent a jolt of adrenaline through Rex. They were hunting him now, not just to capture him, but to kill him. He had to move fast. Darting between crates, he caught a whiff of something familiar. Sarah's scent, faint but unmistakable, leading toward a rusted warehouse at the far end of the dock. His heart pounded. Was she here? Had they brought her from prison? The thought sent a surge of determination through him. He had to get inside. But the entrance was guarded by 2 armed men, their eyes scanning the darkness. Rex hesitated, then noticed a narrow gap beneath the warehouse's siding, just big enough for a dog to squeeze through. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the sour stench of sweat. The warehouse was a maze of stacked crates and dimly lit corridors. Rex crept forward, his nose guiding him toward a locked door at the back. Behind it, muffled voices argued. "The evidence is here," a woman's voice said, sharp, commanding. Not Sarah's. "If that dog finds it before we move it, everything falls apart." A man grunted in agreement. "Then we burn it. Tonight." Rex's breath hitched. Evidence, proof that could free Sarah. But he had no way to open the door, no way to get to it before they destroyed everything. He needed a distraction. His eyes landed on a loose pipe leaning against the wall. With a sudden, calculated push, he sent it clattering to the ground. The voices inside fell silent. What was that? Footsteps approached the door. Rex bolted, slipping behind a crate just as the door swung open. A man stepped out, gun drawn, scanning the shadows. "Probably just a rat," he muttered after a moment, turning back inside. But Rex wasn't done. As the door began to close, he lunged, slipping through the gap at the last second. The room beyond was small, lit by a single flickering bulb. A woman in a police captain's uniform stood over a table scattered with files. Captain Diaz, Sarah's former boss. Rex's stomach twisted. She was supposed to be on their side, but the cold look in her eyes told a different story. "We're out of time," she said, grabbing a lighter. "Burn it all." Rex didn't think. He sprang forward, knocking the lighter from her hand with a snarl. Diaz stumbled back, shock flashing across her face. "The dog!" Before she could react, Rex clamped his jaws onto the edge of the evidence folder and yanked it free from the table. Papers scattered. A photograph fluttered to the ground. Sarah, standing beside Diaz, both in uniform, but someone had scribbled over Sarah's face in red ink. A target. Diaz's expression twisted into fury. "Kill it!" she screamed. The man by the door raised his gun, but Rex was already moving, darting between legs, knocking over a lamp in his desperation to escape. The room plunged into darkness. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the confined space. A bullet grazed Rex's hind leg, sending a sharp burst of pain through him, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Bursting back out into the warehouse, he ran blindly, the folder still clenched in his teeth. Behind him, shouts and chaos erupted as Diaz and her men gave chase. He had the evidence now, but no way to get it to someone who could help. The police were hunting him, the criminals were hunting him, and with every second, Sarah's time was running out. Then, through the fog of pain and panic, a new sound reached his ears, a familiar voice calling his name. The voice cut through the chaos like a lifeline, rough but familiar. "Rex, over here!" For a split second, Rex hesitated, his body trembling from exhaustion and pain. The gunshot wound on his leg burned with every step, but the urgency in that voice made him turn. Through the haze of fog and flickering dock lights, he saw a figure crouched behind a stack of cargo pallets. Detective Mark Harris, Sarah's old partner. His face was bruised, his clothes disheveled, but his eyes were sharp with determination. Rex's tail gave an involuntary twitch. Harris wasn't supposed to be here. He'd been suspended after defending Sarah during the trial. What was he doing at the docks? Rex darted toward him, the evidence folder still clamped tightly in his jaws. Harris reached out, grabbing the dog's collar to pull him into the shadows just as Diaz's men rounded the corner, their flashlights sweeping the area. "Where'd that damn dog go?" one of them snarled. Harris held his breath, pressing a hand against Rex's back to keep him still. The seconds stretched like hours as the men searched, their footsteps crunching on gravel just inches away. Then, a radio crackled to life. "All units, report to the North Warehouse. Possible breach." The men cursed and took off running, their voices fading into the night. Harris exhaled sharply and turned to Rex, his hands immediately going to the wound on the dog's leg. "Easy, boy. You're okay," he murmured, ripping a strip of fabric from his shirt to wrap around the injury. Rex whined but didn't pull away. He could smell the truth on Harris. This man wasn't a traitor. He was here for the same reason Rex was, to clear Sarah's name. "You found something, didn't you?" Harris whispered, carefully prying the folder from Rex's teeth. His eyes scanned the contents, widening as he took in the damning evidence. Photos, bank records, and a handwritten note from Diaz herself. "Frame Miller. She's too close to figuring it out." A muscle in Harris's jaw twitched. "I knew it," he muttered. "Diaz has been dirty for years, but I never had proof. This changes everything." He looked at Rex, his expression grim. "But we can't take this to the station. Half the department's on her payroll. If we walk in there, we're dead before we reach the chief." Rex let out a low growl, his ears flattening. He didn't need to understand the words to feel the danger radiating off Harris. A sudden noise made them both freeze. A metallic creak, like a door swinging open. Harris shoved the folder into his jacket and grabbed Rex's collar. "We need to move. Now." They slipped through the maze of shipping containers, staying low. But the docks were crawling with Diaz's men now. Flashlights cut through the fog like knives, and voices shouted orders back and forth. Harris ducked behind a forklift, pulling Rex close. "There's a boat at Pier 7, he breathed. "Friend of mine. He can get us out of here, get this evidence to the feds. But we have to make it there first." Rex's ears pricked. He could hear footsteps approaching. Too many, too fast. Harris seemed to realize it too. His grip on Rex tightened. "When I say go, run like hell. Don't stop for anything, understand?" Rex met his gaze and gave a single, determined nod. Harris took a deep breath, then shoved the forklift's lever forward. The machine lurched to life with a deafening screech, rolling straight toward the approaching men. "Go!" They bolted. Gunfire erupted behind them, bullets pinging off metal as they weaved through the chaos. Rex's leg screamed in protest, but he pushed through, matching Harris stride for stride. Pier 7 was just ahead. A small fishing boat bobbing in the water, its engine already rumbling. A man stood at the helm, waving frantically. "Harris, hurry!" They were so close. Then pain. A bullet grazed Harris's shoulder, sending him stumbling. Rex skidded to a halt, turning back with a snarl as two of Diaz's men closed in, guns raised. Harris clutched his bleeding arm, his face pale but defiant. "Take the folder," he ordered, thrusting it toward the boat. "Get it to the feds. I'll hold them off." Rex didn't wait for the rest. With a vicious growl, he launched himself at the nearest attacker, his teeth sinking into the man's wrist. The gun clattered to the ground. Harris didn't waste the opportunity. He tackled the second man, buying precious seconds. The boat's engine roared louder. "Rex, now!" the fisherman shouted. Rex hesitated. He couldn't leave Harris. But the evidence was the only thing that could save Sarah. With a final agonizing whine, he turned and sprinted for the boat, leaping onto the deck just as it pulled away from the dock. Behind him, Harris fought like a man possessed, but the odds were impossible. More men were coming. As the boat sped into the night, Rex watched the dock shrink into the distance, his chest heaving. He'd done it. He'd gotten the evidence out. But at what cost? And where was Sarah now? The boat cut through the black water, its engine a steady growl against the silence of the night. Rex stood at the bow, his paws gripping the wet wood as the wind whipped through his fur. The evidence folder lay at his feet, its corners damp with sea spray. His leg throbbed where the bullet had grazed him, but the pain was nothing compared to the storm raging in his chest. Harris was back there, alone. And Sarah, where was she now? Was she even still alive? The thought made his muscles tense, a low whine escaping his throat before he could stop it. The fisherman, a grizzled man with a scar running down his cheek, glanced at Rex, his eyes shadowed. "Easy, soldier," he muttered, adjusting the boat's course. "We ain't out of this yet." He kept checking the horizon, his grip tight on the wheel. Rex didn't trust him. Not fully. The man smelled like salt and gasoline, but underneath that there was something else. Nerves, like he was waiting for something or someone. Then the radio crackled to life. "All vessels, be advised. We have a fugitive K-9 and stolen police property heading southbound, armed and dangerous. Shoot on sight." The fisherman's jaw clenched. Rex's ears pinned back. That was Diaz's voice. She'd taken control of the entire operation. The man reached for the radio, his fingers hovering. Then he yanked the cord out instead, killing the signal. "Damn cops," he spat. "Whole damn system's rotten." He looked at Rex, his expression unreadable. "Harris said you were smart. Hope he wasn't lying." Rex didn't relax. Something was wrong. The boat was slowing, then he saw it. A shadow on the water. Another boat, bigger, faster, cutting through the fog toward them. No lights, silent. Hunting. The fisherman cursed under his breath. "They found us." He grabbed the evidence folder and shoved it into a waterproof bag, then tossed it to Rex. "Listen close, dog. You gotta jump." Rex stiffened. Jump? Into the water? The waves churned below, black and hungry. "There's an island 1/2 mile east," the man said, pointing into the darkness. "Swim for it, hide, don't let him find you, or that folder." He reached for a flare gun, his hand steady. "I'll buy you time." The other boat was closer now. Rex could see figures moving on deck, the glint of rifles. A gunshot rang out. Wood splintered near the wheel. The fisherman didn't flinch. "Go." Rex didn't hesitate. Clamping the bag in his teeth, he leaped overboard. The icy water hit him like 1,000 knives, stealing his breath. The weight of the bag dragged him down, but he kicked hard, fighting toward the surface. Above him, the night exploded in light. A flare shot into the sky, painting everything in hellish red. Shouts echoed across the water. More gunfire. Rex swam. His legs burned, his lungs screamed, but he swam. The island was a smudge in the distance, too far, too damn far. Then a hand grabbed his collar. Rex thrashed, teeth bared, ready to fight, until he saw the face staring back at him from the water. Sarah, pale, exhausted, but alive. Her prison jumpsuit was torn, her hair matted with salt and blood, but her grip was iron. "I've got you!" she gasped, pulling him toward a piece of floating debris. A broken door, maybe from some shipwreck long gone. Rex scrambled onto it, his whole body shaking. Sarah hauled herself up beside him, her breath ragged. "Harris, he got a message to me," she panted. "Said you were coming, said you had proof." Rex dropped the bag at her feet. Sarah's hands trembled as she tore it open. The folder inside was damp but intact. Her eyes scanned the pages, widening with each word. Then slowly, her expression hardened into something fierce. "Diaz set me up," she whispered. "But this is enough to bury her." A spotlight swept the water nearby. Voices shouted. They were still searching. Sarah shoved the evidence back into the bag and secured it around Rex's neck. "We have to move," she said. "Can you make it to shore?" Rex nodded. Together, they slipped back into the water, the island their only hope. But as they swam, Rex kept glancing back at the boats, where the fishermen had been, where Harris might still be. And the nagging thought wouldn't leave him. Diaz wasn't the only traitor. The island was nothing more than a jagged spine of rock jutting from the sea, its shore littered with broken shells and driftwood that crackled under their feet as Sarah and Rex dragged themselves onto land. The salt water stung the bullet graze on Rex's leg, and Sarah's hands were raw from clinging to the debris, but neither of them dared to stop moving. The spotlight from the patrol boats still sliced through the fog behind them, closer now. The shouts of the men carrying over the water like the cries of gulls. Sarah crouched behind a boulder, her chest heaving as she pulled the waterproof bag from Rex's neck and checked the evidence again. The papers were damp at the edges, but the words were still clear. Bank transfers, surveillance photos, and Diaz's own handwriting detailing the plan to frame Sarah for the murder of a city councilman. It was all there, enough to bring down Diaz, enough to clear Sarah's name. But as Sarah's fingers traced a particular line in the documents, her breath hitched. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. Rex tilted his head, watching her. "Diaz didn't have access to these funds," Sarah muttered, squinting at the numbers. "This kind of money, it had to come from higher up." Her fingers tightened around the paper. "Someone else is pulling the strings." A branch snapped in the trees behind them. Rex spun, teeth bared, just as a figure stepped from the shadows. A man in a black tactical vest, his face obscured by a ski mask. Sarah lunged for a piece of driftwood, raising it like a weapon, but the man didn't attack. Instead, he lifted his hand slowly and pulled the mask down. Rex's growl died in his throat. It was Harris. Blood streaked the side of his face, and his left arm hung limp at his side, but he was alive. "Took you long enough," he rasped. Sarah didn't lower the driftwood. "How did you find us?" "Tracker in the bag," Harris said, nodding to the evidence. "I planted it before the fishermen took off. Had a feeling you'd end up here?" He took a step forward, wincing. "Sarah, listen to me. Diaz is just the middleman. The real problem is—" A gunshot cracked through the air. Harris jerked as the bullet punched through his vest, sending him sprawling into the sand. Sarah dropped to his side, but he shoved her away. "Run!" he snarled. Rex didn't need to be told twice. He clamped his teeth onto Sarah's sleeve and yanked her backward, just as another shot kicked up sand where she'd been kneeling. The trees erupted with movement. Figures in black, their rifles trained on them. "Go!" Harris gasped, rolling onto his knees and reaching for the gun at his hip. "I'll hold them off." Sarah hesitated for only a second before she turned and ran, Rex at her heels. The jungle swallowed them, the thick foliage tearing at their skin as they crashed through it. Behind them, gunfire erupted, Harris buying them time. But for how long? They didn't stop until they reached a shallow cave hidden in the rocks, its mouth half blocked by vines. Sarah collapsed inside, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Rex pressed against her, his ears straining for any sound of pursuit. "He knew," Sarah whispered, staring at the evidence in her hands. Harris knew it wasn't just Diaz. Rex whined softly, nudging her arm. Sarah's fingers trembled as she flipped through the pages again, stopping on a photo she hadn't noticed before. A group shot of police brass at a fundraiser. Diaz was there, smiling. So was the chief of police. And standing beside them, his hand resting casually on Diaz's shoulder, was the mayor. Sarah's blood went cold. "Oh my God," she breathed, because tucked under the mayor's arm was a file, and written on it, in bold letters, was a single word: Rex. The cave walls seemed to press closer as Sarah stared at the photograph, her fingers shaking so badly the paper rattled. The mayor's smug smile burned into her vision, but it was that single word, R-E-X, scrawled across the file tucked under his arm that made her stomach twist. She'd known the mayor was corrupt, had suspected it for years. But this was something else. This was personal. Rex whined beside her, pressing his wet nose against her wrist as if sensing her panic. She forced herself to breathe, to think. Why would the mayor care about a canine dog? Then it hit her. The night of the councilman's murder. She'd been called to a late-night meeting, a supposed drug bust at the docks. But when she and Rex arrived, the place was empty. No suspects, no drugs, just the councilman's body, still warm, a single bullet wound to the head. And Rex. Rex had gone crazy, barking at shadows, snarling at empty corners. She'd thought he was just agitated, but what if he'd smelled something? Someone. Someone who shouldn't have been there. Someone like the mayor. A branch snapped outside the cave. Sarah froze, her hand flying to Rex's muzzle to silence him. Footsteps crunched over gravel, slow and deliberate. Too heavy to be Harris. Too confident to be one of Diaz's lackeys. "Sarah Miller," a voice called, smooth as oil. "I know you're in there." Her blood turned to ice. The mayor. Rex's growl was a silent vibration against her palm. She could feel his muscles coiling, ready to attack. But they were outnumbered, outgunned. She had no weapon, no backup, just a folder of evidence and a dog who'd already been shot once tonight. The mayor sighed, as if disappointed. "You always were stubborn. But this is just sad." A pause. Then, "Bring her out." Shadows moved at the cave entrance. Sarah scrambled back, clutching the folder to her chest. Rex planted himself in front of her, teeth bared. But the men who stepped inside weren't cops. They wore black suits, their faces blank, their earpieces gleaming. Private security. The kind only the obscenely rich could afford. "The mayor's not here to negotiate," one said, his voice robotic. "He's here to make sure you disappear." Sarah's mind raced. The cave had no back exit, no escape. Then Rex lunged. He hit the first man like a bullet, knocking him into the wall with a snarl. The second guard fumbled for his gun, but Sarah was already moving, driving her shoulder into his stomach. The gun went off, the bullet ricocheting off the cave walls as they crashed to the ground. Rex tore at the first man's arm, his teeth sinking deep, but more footsteps were coming. Too many. Sarah grabbed a rock and swung. The guard beneath her went limp. "Rex, come!" They burst from the cave into the storm, the rain slashing at their faces. The mayor stood a few yards away, an umbrella held over his head by another suit, his expression bored. "Really, Sarah," he called. "You think this ends well for you?" She didn't answer. She ran. The jungle swallowed them again, the mayor's laughter chasing them like a ghost. The jungle was a living, breathing beast. Vines lashed at Sarah's arms like whips, thorns bit into her skin, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to shift treacherously with every step. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Behind her, shouts echoed through the trees, the mayor's men fanning out like a pack of wolves closing in on wounded prey. Rex stayed glued to her side, his fur matted with rain and mud, his breaths coming in sharp, pained bursts. The gunshot wound on his leg had reopened, leaving smears of blood in their wake, a trail their hunters wouldn't miss. Sarah's mind raced. The island was small, barely more than a speck on the map, but right now it felt like a prison. No boats, no way to call for help. And the mayor, the damn mayor, was here personally to make sure she and Rex never made it back to the mainland. That alone told her one thing. Whatever they'd stumbled into was bigger than a simple cover-up, bigger than Diaz, bigger than a murdered councilman. Then she heard it, the distant hum of an engine. She skidded to a halt, dragging Rex behind a thick curtain of ferns. Through the leaves, she could just make out a flicker of light bobbing on the water. A boat. Not one of the patrol vessels. This was smaller, faster. And it was anchored in a secluded cove, its running lights off, as if trying to stay hidden. "Someone's here," she whispered, her fingers tightening in Rex's fur. A figure moved on the boat's deck, silhouetted against the storm-lit sky. Sarah squinted, her pulse hammering. Then the figure turned, and the faint glow of a cigarette illuminated a familiar, scarred face. The fisherman, the man who'd helped them escape, the man who was supposed to be dead. Sarah's breath caught. Was this a trap? Had he led the mayor to them? But then the fisherman did something unexpected. He raised a hand, not in greeting but in warning. His eyes locked onto hers through the foliage, and slowly, deliberately, he pointed past her, toward the trees behind them. A chill slithered down Sarah's spine. She turned just in time to see the shadow detach itself from the trunk of a nearby palm. A man. Not one of the mayor's suits. This man wore a police vest, Harris's vest. But it wasn't Harris. It was Diaz. Her gun was already drawn. "Found you," she smirked. Rex exploded into motion before Sarah could react. He hit Diaz like a freight train, knocking the gun from her hand as they crashed into the underbrush. Sarah dove for the weapon, but Diaz was faster, scrambling back with a snarl and yanking a knife from her belt. "You should have stayed in prison, Miller," she spat. Rex circled her, his teeth bared, blood dripping from his leg. Diaz feinted left, then lunged, but Rex wasn't the target. The knife flashed toward Sarah. A gunshot rang out. Diaz jerked, her eyes widening as a red bloom spread across her shoulder. She staggered back, her knife slipping from her fingers. Sarah whirled toward the sound. The fisherman stood at the edge of the trees, his smoking pistol still raised. "Told you to run," he grunted. But the shot had been a beacon. Somewhere in the jungle, the mayor's voice barked an order. "Move in," the fisherman cursed. "Boat, now." Sarah didn't argue. She grabbed Rex's collar and ran, Diaz's scream of rage chasing them through the trees. The boat's engine roared to life as they splashed into the shallows. The fisherman hauled them aboard, his hands rough but steady. "Down," he snapped, shoving Sarah to the deck as another gunshot splintered the hull. The boat peeled away from the shore, bullets peppering the water around them. Sarah clutched Rex to her chest, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Then, over the roar of the engine, the fisherman yelled something that made her blood freeze. "You got the evidence?" Sarah's stomach dropped. The folder. She'd dropped it when Diaz attacked. It was still on the island, with the mayor. And now he knew everything. The boat tore through the waves like a hunted animal, its engine screaming against the weight of the storm. Sarah clung to the rail, her knuckles white. Her body braced against every punishing impact of the hull against black water. The island was shrinking behind them, swallowed by rain and darkness. But the danger wasn't over. Not even close. The folder, the proof, was gone. The mayor had it now. And without it, she was still a fugitive. Still a murderer in the eyes of the law. Rex pressed against her leg, his body trembling with exhaustion and pain, his breath hot against her skin. She wanted to comfort him, to tell him they were safe now, but the words stuck in her throat, because the fisherman at the wheel hadn't said a word since they'd fled. And that silence was louder than any warning. The boat lurched violently as they hit a rogue wave, sending Sarah crashing to her knees. The fisherman didn't slow, didn't react. His eyes stayed locked on the horizon, his grip tight on the wheel. The scar on his cheek gleamed in the dim light of the console, a jagged reminder of whatever past had led him here. Sarah studied him, the way his jaw clenched, the way his free hand hovered near the gun at his hip. This wasn't just some random smuggler helping her out of the goodness of his heart. He had an agenda, and she needed to know what it was. "Why did you come back?" she shouted over the wind. The fisherman didn't look at her. Harris is dead. Maybe. A shrug, but he paid me up front. Sarah's stomach twisted. Paid him for what? Before she could ask, the boat's radio crackled to life. A burst of static, then a voice she recognized instantly. "All units, be advised. Officer Sarah Miller and K9 Rex are considered armed and extremely dangerous. Shoot on sight. Diaz, alive, pissed, and already spinning the story." The fisherman finally turned, his gaze cutting through her like a blade. "You got one play left, Miller." Sarah waited. "The mayor's yacht," he said. "It's docked at Marina Key. He'll be heading there now, to destroy that evidence before anyone sees it." Rex let out a low growl, his ears flattening. Sarah's mind raced. The marina was crawling with cops, with Diaz's people. Walking in there was suicide, but the fisherman wasn't done. "He's got a vault on board," he continued. "Digital, requires a biometric key." Sarah frowned. "So?" The fisherman's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "It's keyed to the dog." The words hit her like a punch. "Rex?" Suddenly, the pieces clicked. The mayor's file, the setup at the docks, the way Rex had reacted the night of the murder. Not just barking, but tracking. He'd scented something. Someone. And the mayor knew it. That's why he wanted Rex dead. Not just to tie up loose ends, but because Rex was the key. The boat's engine dropped to a growl as they neared the mainland, the lights of the city glowing through the rain. The fisherman cut the wheel hard, sending them skidding toward a derelict pier. "You get on that yacht, you get that vault open," he said, "and you'll have more than enough proof to bury the mayor. Every dirty deal, every payoff, it's all there." Sarah stared at him. "How do you know all this?" For the first time, the fisherman looked uneasy. "Because I built the system." A beat of silence. Then, "I used to work for him." Rex's growl deepened. Sarah's fingers itched for the gun at the fisherman's hip. "And why should I trust you?" The fisherman met her gaze. "Because the mayor killed my brother, same as he killed that councilman, same as he'll kill you and that dog if you don't move fast." Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The fisherman nodded toward the pier. "Go." Sarah hesitated. Then, with a final glance at Rex, she made her choice. They jumped. The boat roared away behind them, vanishing into the storm. Ahead, the marina, the yacht, and the truth. The marina was a graveyard of swaying masts and creaking docks, the storm turning every shadow into a potential threat. Sarah moved like a ghost between the moored boats, Rex limping silently at her side. His leg was getting worse. Each step left a faint smudge of blood on the rain-slick wood. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not when the mayor's yacht loomed ahead, a sleek monstrosity glowing like a beacon in the dark. Its decks were empty, its gangplank down, as if daring them to come aboard. Too easy. Sarah's fingers brushed the stolen gun tucked into her waistband, the fisherman's parting gift. 6 bullets. Not enough for a fight, but enough to buy time. Rex's nose twitched as they neared the yacht, his ears swiveling toward a sound she couldn't hear. Then she caught it too. Voices. Muffled. Angry. Vault first, then we sink the whole damn boat. The mayor's voice. Sarah's blood ran cold. She dropped to a crouch, pulling Rex close as 2 figures emerged on the upper deck. The mayor, his tailored suit rumpled from the chase, and a hulking bodyguard carrying a metal case. The evidence. But it wasn't just papers inside that case. It was something else. Something that made the bodyguard's arms strain with its weight. "Move," the mayor snapped. "I want this done before Diaz screws things up again." They disappeared inside, leaving the deck eerily quiet. Too quiet. Sarah exhaled. "We need to get to that vault," she whispered to Rex. But Rex wasn't listening. His entire body had gone rigid, his gaze locked on the water beside the yacht. At first, Sarah saw nothing, just black waves slapping against the hull, then a ripple, a flicker of movement beneath the surface. Someone, was swimming toward the boat. A diver? Number. The figure that emerged from the water was lean, dressed in tactical black, a knife clenched between their teeth. They hauled themselves onto the yacht's lower deck with silent precision, water streaming off their gear. Sarah's breath caught. Harris, alive, bleeding from a gash on his temple, but alive. He'd followed them, or had he been waiting here all along? Harris glanced around, then signaled toward the water. 2 more divers surfaced, their faces obscured by masks. Backup. But whose? Sarah's grip on the gun tightened. Nothing about this added up. Harris was suspended, hunted. So who the hell were these people? Rex let out a barely audible whine, his nose pointed toward the metal case the bodyguard had carried. "You smell something?" Sarah murmured. Then it hit her. The vault wasn't just digital, it was biological, keyed to Rex's DNA. Which meant the mayor hadn't just brought the evidence here to destroy it. He'd brought it here to use it. And Harris knew, that's why he was here. Sarah's mind raced. The fisherman's words echoed in her skull. Every dirty deal, every payoff. It's all there. But what if the vault held more than proof? What if it held leverage? The kind of leverage that could topple governments, the kind worth killing for. Harris and his team slipped inside the yacht, vanishing like ghosts. Sarah made her decision. "We're going in," she told Rex. But as they moved toward the gangplank, a hand clamped over her mouth from behind, yanking her into the shadows. "Don't!" a voice hissed in her ear. The fisherman. His eyes were wild, his breath ragged. "It's a trap. The vault's rigged. Open it, and the whole boat goes up." Sarah tore free. Then why is Harris here? That was why Diaz had been on the island. Not to hunt them, to beat them to the vault. Harris's face went ashen beneath his tan, his weapon hand wavering for the first time. The fisherman beside Sarah cursed violently in a language she didn't recognize, his grip on her arm tightening to the point of pain. And Rex moved. He was a golden streak across the rain-slick deck, moving faster than Sarah had ever seen him move before. Diaz barely had time to register his approach before 70 pounds of furious canine muscle slammed into her, his teeth closing around her wrist with enough force to shatter bone. The USB drive arced through the air, landing with a plastic clatter just beyond the mayor's polished shoes. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions at once, the staccato bursts deafening in the confined space. The fisherman shoved Sarah hard toward the case, his voice cutting through the chaos. Go! Now! She didn't think, didn't hesitate. She ran. The case was heavier than she expected when she scooped it up, its metal surface slippery with rain and something warmer. Blood. Her fingers fumbled with the latches, slick and uncooperative. Click. The lid sprang open with a hiss of pressurized air. What lay inside wasn't just evidence, wasn't just papers or photographs or even digital files. It was a hard drive, sleek, black, and far more sophisticated than anything she'd seen in standard police operations. Its surface was studded with ports and indicators, but what drew her eye was the single, pulsing red light in its center. A timer. 000500, 000459, 000458. The fisherman's warning roared back into her mind with terrifying clarity. The vault's rigged. Open it, and the whole boat goes up. But this wasn't the vault. This was something worse. This was the payload, and it was counting down. Harris's voice cut through the gunfire, raw with a desperation she'd never heard from him before. Sarah! It's not just data, it's a weapon. He's targeting the... The gunshot was deafening at this range. Harris jerked as if yanked by invisible strings, a dark red flower blooming across the left side of his chest. His mouth worked soundlessly for a moment before his knees buckled. The mayor lowered his still-smoking pistol, his expression one of mild annoyance. Enough talk. The numbers kept ticking down relentlessly. 00322, 00321, 00320. Sarah's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the device. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for everyone's, and the only one who could stop it was Rex. The numbers on the device continued their relentless descent. 000245, 000244, 000243, each passing second tightening the noose around Sarah's throat. The hard drive in her hands felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, its pulsing red light casting eerie shadows across her rain-slicked face. Around her, the yacht had descended into pure chaos. Gunfire still echoed across the deck. Bodies littered the polished wood, and somewhere in the fray, the mayor was shouting orders with the manic energy of a man who knew his empire was crumbling. But none of that mattered now. Not the blood, not the bullets, not even the betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. Only the timer. Only the weapon. Only Rex. Sarah's eyes locked onto her dog, who stood protectively over the fallen USB drive, his teeth bared in a snarl as he faced down the approaching mayor. The German shepherd's golden fur was matted with rain and blood, some his own, some not, but his stance was unwavering. In that moment, Sarah realized with terrifying clarity what had to happen next. The vault, the real vault, not this decoy, was still on board. The fisherman had said it required Rex's biometrics to open, and if the mayor had gone to such lengths to destroy its contents, then whatever was inside was worth more than lives, more than cities, maybe more than entire nations. "Rex!" Sarah screamed over the storm, her voice raw. "To me!" The dog didn't hesitate. He lunged away from the USB drive just as the mayor made a grab for it, his powerful legs propelling him through the gunfire like a living missile. Sarah dropped to her knees, catching him in a one-armed embrace while her other hand fumbled for the hard drive. The timer blinked up at her. 000130. A minute and a half to do the impossible. The fisherman appeared suddenly at her side, his face a mask of grim determination. "The vault's below deck," he shouted, yanking her upright. "But it's not just a scan, it needs his blood." Sarah's stomach lurched. Of course, the ultimate biometric lock. The mayor hadn't just wanted Rex dead to tie up loose ends. He'd needed him eliminated so no one could ever access what was hidden away. Bullets sparked off the metal railing beside them as they ran, the fisherman leading the way down a narrow staircase into the yacht's belly. The lower deck was eerily quiet, the sounds of battle muffled by layers of steel and luxury. At the end of a hallway lined with expensive artwork stood an unmarked door. No handle, no visible seams. Just a small, black panel at waist height. "Here!" The fisherman skidded to a stop, shoving Sarah forward. "Put his paw on the scanner." Sarah didn't have time to question how he knew so much. She grabbed Rex's injured leg, ignoring his pained yelp as she pressed his bloody paw against the panel. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, beep. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a room that looked more like a high-tech laboratory than a yacht's interior. Banks of monitors lined the walls, their screens filled with maps, schematics, and lines of scrolling code. But at the center of it all stood a glass cylinder, inside which floated a smaller, more sophisticated version of the device in Sarah's hands. This one's timer read 000099. The fisherman sucked in a sharp breath. "That's the master control. Whatever signal your box is receiving, it's coming from that." Sarah's mind raced. The mayor hadn't just rigged the yacht to explode. He'd created a network of these devices. This was bigger than corruption, bigger than murder. This was an EMP, the fisherman confirmed, seeing the realization dawn on her face. Set to fry every electronic system in the city, banks, hospitals, prisons. He's not just covering his tracks, he's resetting the board. 000045. Sarah's hands shook as she looked between the 2 devices. The one in her grip was just a receiver. Destroying it wouldn't stop anything. But the master control... Rex whined, nudging her leg. When she looked down, she saw the USB drive clenched gently in his teeth, the override Diaz had brought. The fisherman's eyes widened. That might work. If we can... A gunshot cut him off. He staggered forward, a look of almost comical surprise on his face as a red stain spread across his back. Behind him, the mayor stepped into the room, his pistol smoking. "Enough," the mayor said calmly. "This ends now. 000030. Sarah acted on pure instinct. She grabbed the USB from Rex's mouth and sprinted for the glass cylinder. The mayor's gun barked again. A searing pain ripped through her shoulder, but she didn't stop. With a scream of effort, she drove the USB into the only port she could see on the master device. The effect was immediate. The monitors flickered wildly. The glass cylinder frosted over as the temperature inside plummeted. And the timer, 00005, 00004, 000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000 3 stuttered, stopped. Then the entire system screamed, an ear-piercing alarm that shattered 2 of the monitors in sprays of glass and sparks. The mayor roared in fury, raising his gun again, but Rex was already in the air. The impact sent both man and dog crashing to the floor, the pistol skittering away. Sarah didn't wait to see the outcome. She grabbed the fisherman's limp form and dragged him toward the door as the room began to shake, pipes bursting overhead as the system self-destructed. They made it 3 steps into the hallway before the explosion hit. The force lifted Sarah off her feet, slamming her into the far wall as fire and debris filled the corridor. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Rex's golden form streaking toward her through the flames. Epilogue. The news called it a miracle. A freak electrical storm, they said, had caused the mayor's luxury yacht to explode in the harbor. The resulting fire had burned so hot that little evidence remained of whatever illegal activities might have been occurring on board. The mayor's body was never found. Captain Diaz resigned from the police force, citing health reasons. Harris survived his gunshot wound, though he refused all interviews about that night. And Sarah Miller? Sarah woke up in a hospital bed 3 days later to find Rex curled at her feet, his leg neatly bandaged. On the bedside table sat a single, unmarked envelope. Inside was a photograph of the glass cylinder room and a note. The game's not over, but thanks for saving the pieces. A friend. She burned it immediately. That afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the window and Rex snored softly beside her, Sarah realized something. Evil would always exist. Corruption would always find cracks to seep into, but so would loyalty, so would courage, and most of all, so would love. Moral lesson. In a world where power corrupts and systems fail, the purest justice often comes not from institutions, but from the unbreakable bonds between those willing to fight for what's right, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. True loyalty doesn't recognize uniforms or titles. It recognizes heart. And sometimes all it takes to change the world is one good dog, and the person brave enough to stand beside him.